And the pattern has developed across the country. The man has gone insane, absolutely out of his mind. Besides, you can't be 70 years old and surround yourself by a handful of 16, 17, 18-year-old girls and keep your right mind. You can't do it.
Mr. Muhammad, could you tell us what happened between you and Malcolm X? What was the point of disagreement, sir? You left. He wanted to use arms, and I disagreed with him because we have always, for many years now, it's 33 years, 34 years now.
Malcolm went out of the nation. We all were hurt. At least I can speak for myself. I loved him. Next to Elijah Muhammad, I didn't know anybody greater than Malcolm X. It hurt me that he would go out of the nation.
We have known Malcolm for quite a few years. Last year, 1964, was kind of a bill with us. Malcolm breaking out of the Brotherhood of Islam.
Primarily because they're afraid that I will tell the real reason that that I'm out of the black Muslim movement, which I never told. I kept to myself. But the real reason is that Elijah Muhammad, the head of the movement, is the father of 8 children by 6 different teenage girls.
He dogged the messenger. The man that took him from a pimp, from a hustler, from a stick-up man, and sent him before the world. Now he's dogging his teacher. What do you think we felt? Elijah Muhammad wasn't just a leader. That's our spiritual guide and father, brother. You don't have to order me to kill you. If you attack my father, my orders come from my love. I want you to hear me good, because every Muslim that loved Elijah Muhammad would have killed Malcolm if we had gotten a chance. No, I don't need no damn applause. I want you to think now. We didn't incite that. Malcolm incited that in us.
As many of you know, last Sunday morning about 3 o'clock, somebody threw some bombs inside my house. Normally, I wouldn't get excited over a few bombs, but the ones who threw these not only aimed them in rooms where there was no one, but aimed them in rooms where 3 of my daughters sleep. One daughter 6, one daughter 4, and one daughter 2. And since I am quite certain that those who threw the bombs knew my house well enough to know where everyone was sleeping, I can't quite bring my heart to the point where it can in any way be merciful or from now on compromising toward anyone who can be that low.
He blamed the Muslims on the firebombing of his New York home. Do you have a comment on that? But in every respect or evidence, it looks to me like he did the job himself.
I am Elijah of your Bible. I'm the Muhammad of your Holy Quran. Not the Muhammad that was here near 1400 years ago. I am the one that the Holy Quran is referring to. The Muhammad that was here 1400 years ago was a white man.
He was sympathetic, he was generous, he was faithful, he was forgiving, he was courageous, he was steadfast.
Yes.
But he was a white man.
Come on.
Is that a problem? See, it's only a problem if goodness to you is measured by the color of a person's skin. You got a problem. Because he was white complected. But yet was all of this that the Quran says he was.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We forever thank Almighty God, Allah, for coming, as it was written and prophesied that he would come to seek and to save that which was lost. We thank him for coming in the person of Master Farad Muhammad and raising up in our midst a divine leader, a divine teacher, and a divine guide in the person of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
And on his leave of us, he began to tell me what I may expect, what will come to pass, and what I should do to try and make my people qualified, rather to reform them and make them accepted by the Islamic people, and teach them that they must change completely.
Elijah Muhammad fathered children from his teenage secretaries. So Malcolm raised it to a moral issue. Listen to me carefully. Putting himself in the righteous position, putting his teacher in an immoral position, but then he's going to the white man to tell the white man what his leader and teacher had done.
I want to point out, too, that I'm not talking about Muslims just to make white people happy, because I don't believe in letting anyone use me against somebody else. I'm telling you these things because it has reached a point where I feel that black people in this country need to know what's going on. And I'm talking about an organization which I had a hand in building, which I had a hand in organizing. I know its characteristics. I know its potential. I know its behavior pattern. I know what it can do and what it cannot do. And one of the things it can do is bomb your house and try and kill your babies.
Mr. Muhammad, did you say that Malcolm set fire to his own home?
No, I didn't say that.
Well,
I think it looks like he was the one.
What made it look like that?
Because that, according to the police report, he was the only one in there, and that was the liquid that would do a job like that.
His family was in the house with him.
Yeah, according to the paper. I'm going on from what I read in the paper.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad didn't send me to beat black people or shoot black people, but to teach black people. And you'll always find me defending black people because he showed me how to defend my people. But you know, sisters and brothers, in the Bible, David had a son called Absalom. And Absalom rose up against his father David and violated David's wives in the presence of all of Israel and made war on the father. And when the father's forces went out to meet the forces of the son, David told Joab, when you catch my son, don't kill him. Bring my son to me.
Mr. Muhammad, I'm sorry. Would you say flatly that no black Muslims were involved in the shooting of Malcolm X?
I wasn't there, but I don't believe that any of my followers had nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah, I love Elijah Muhammad enough that if you attack him, I will kill you. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I'm not a killer, but neither are you. But if somebody attack what you love, each one of you in here would become a killer instantaneously. Am I lying? Mother, let somebody look like they're attacking your child. Here's a woman who fought a bear because the bear snatched her baby. And she ran the bear down, screaming until the bear dropped her baby.
Who do you think might have done it then? Who would have had least?
I don't know. I have no knowledge of that.
Are you in fear of your own life?
No, sir.
There's no organization in this country that could do more for the struggling black man than the Black Muslim movement if it wanted to. But it has gotten into the possession of a man who's become senile in his old age and perhaps doesn't realize it. and then he has surrounded himself by his children who are now in power and want nothing but luxury and security and comfort and will do anything to safeguard their own interests. So I feel responsible for having played a major role in developing a criminal organization. It was not a criminal organization at the outstart. It was an organization that had the power, the spiritual power, to reform the criminal. And this is what you have to understand. As long as that strong spiritual power was in the movement, it gave the moral strength to the believer that would enable him to rise above all his negative tendencies. I know.
Do you think that Malcolm X gave up Elijah Muhammad because of some sex thing? Do you really think it's that shallow? How could he? How many wives did Prophet Muhammad have, Brother Baghdadi? Some people say 9, some people say 11. Now, when Malcolm was slandering the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, talking about teenage secretaries, didn't the Prophet take a wife who was a pre-teenager? What was her name? Aisha. When he married her, how old was she? She was 11 years old. But he did not have conjugal relations with her until what year? They say 14. Well, Malcolm, how you going to leave Elijah, who had wives, some of them young women? And that man took you up out of the mud and cleaned you up. You didn't know nothing about no Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad didn't come and get you out of jail. It wasn't Umar, it wasn't Ali, it wasn't Abu Bakr, it wasn't Uthman.
Give him a chance to make himself a better brother in the circle of Islam. He left on him. He said he was going for himself. We regret it to have seen Malcolm leave. After we discussed the, I should say, the disobedience part of his actions.
Love casts out fear. We don't give a damn about no white man law when you attack what we love. And frankly, it ain't none of your business. What have you got to say about it? Did you teach Malcolm? Did you make Malcolm? Did you clean up Malcolm? Did you put Malcolm out before the world? Was Malcolm your traitor or was he ours? And if we dealt with him like a nation deals with a traitor, what the hell business is it of yours? You just shut your mouth and stay out of it.
Now you see, this doesn't surprise me because I know that since many of us left the Muslim movement, its intelligence and its morals have gone bankrupt. Both its intelligence and its morals have gone bankrupt. And now they are using the same tactic that's used by the Ku Klux Klan. When the Klan bombs your church, they say you did it. When they bomb the synagogue, they say the Jews bombed their own synagogue. This is the Klan tactic. And tonight, I'll tell you why the black Muslim movement is now adopting the same tactics against black people as has been up to now the exclusive method of the Ku Klux Klan.
Because they have made you to think that divine spirit can only be in white flesh or in yellow flesh or in brown flesh, but it can never be in your own flesh. And this is why, even though Elijah Muhammad did more for us than any man that ever lived, you deny him because you don't think nothing of yourself. You'd rather grab a prophet from yesterday. Because in the future, we're going to become a nation. And the nation got to be able to deal with traitors and cutthroats and turncoats. The white man deals with his. The Jews deal with theirs. Salman Rushdie wrote a nasty thing about the prophet, and Imam Khomeini put out a death thing on him, and it stands today. There's certain paths you don't cross.
Any sort of premonition that Malcolm would meet a violent end as he did?
No, I was in hope that Allah would chastise him and bring him back on his knees. That's what I was in hope of.
Everything that I said always was designed to protect Mr. Muhammad himself, primarily because the image that he had created was the image that enabled his followers to remain strong in faith and things of that sort, and I didn't want to see any adverse effect or negative result develop in the faith of all of his followers. Mm-hmm. But actually, despite the fact that I tried to protect the Muslim movement, if you'll notice, they use their newspaper to slander me and to label me as a hypocrite and as a rebel, and Mr. Muhammad himself said that I defected. Well, in reality, I never even left the Muslim movement. They put me out. And they put me out because of what I knew, and what I knew was told to me by Mr. Muhammad's son, Wallace Muhammad himself. They put me out and they put him out.
Minister Malcolm was the first great national spokesman of the Nation of Islam. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was the second and chose me to be the third in that line. It has been a year since my suspension from national assistant, spokesman, or representative, and from the ministry. And during that year, now over a year, which has become an indefinite suspension, I have made attempts to reach my spiritual father, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and I have not really been able to set up a meeting successfully with him. As difficult as it is to even stand up here, don't prompt me, don't push me. You push me to say something that maybe I shouldn't say or wouldn't have said, as Malcolm was probably prompted and pushed too much 30 years ago.
The assassin Malcolm X was an allegiant with the Muslims in New York. How do you feel about that charge?
In fact about it, that we have been trying to make investigations to find just where this assassin come from. And we have not been able to locate him. We don't know him.
We have zealots in the nation, and we have agents in the nation. I believe the zealots in the mosque in Newark, as it has now come out that they were from the Newark mosque, killed Malcolm. But the hurting thing is, 2 innocent men went to prison for 25 years of their life. And they were sentenced to a prison term that they didn't deserve by the mouth of Betty Shabazz. Betty was so hurt at the death of her husband.
If he would, Malcolm X would split from my
With
father,
his having split and with his death, who will be your successor?
I don't know. That's I cannot tell what will happen after I die.
Because we're in a savage condition. Nobody wants us until God came to claim us as his own. So Malcolm is dead. And the sisters who were the wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have been slandered. You don't ask a man if he's married, are you having sex with your wife? The question is moot. If that's my wife, I have a right to that. So why didn't Malcolm say he took wives? Why did he say teenage secretaries? Because he knew that would inflame you. And it would keep you away from Elijah Muhammad because he had become embittered.
Way I see it, Malcolm is the victim of his own preaching. He preached violence, and so he became the victim of it.
Malcolm, it is true, made attempts to reach the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We don't know if his calls were being intercepted. We don't know if his mail was being intercepted. We don't know what government operatives worked between Malcolm and his spiritual father. I have, for the most part, not spoken on this subject because I am still waiting for my meeting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And until I have that meeting with him, there are things that I would like to hear from him. And there are things, as a son would say, that I would like to say to him. And I don't think I should say them to you before I say them to him. And some of you might not agree with that. I believe I understand Brother Malcolm more today than I have ever understood him before. I was not in the Nation of Islam 30 years ago. I was in my mid-teens at that time, down in Houston, Texas, and had not yet moved on to the university where I would meet the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as a young student leader there in New Orleans. So there are many things on my heart, but I think if you will permit me to be just a little wise today, it would be better, and I'm sure if you will weigh it, you would agree with me. I don't know how long it will take. It's been over a year. But during that year, I have not said as little as a word, nor as much as a sentence against my spiritual father, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And no matter what I have on my heart, again, I think it should be said between father and son, behind closed doors, and some resolution made behind closed doors before I come back to the broader community and the broader family. I have many questions to ask.
That subject here, Mr. Muhammad, even though you hoped he would be chastised, did you have any premonition that he would meet a violent death?
No.
The stick that I always used in presenting, representing, and defending the Muslim movement was the fact that it had the ability to reform the morals of the so-called Negro community. It eliminated drug addiction, alcoholism, fornication, adultery, loose sexual behavior, which meant that it eliminated bastard babies, illegitimate children. Well, as long as I knew that this was what it represented and it gave me a strong stick, I could represent it and defend it. But we had a law which was that whenever any Muslim became involved in any kind of sexual relationship with someone to whom they weren't married, that person would be brought before the Muslim community, humiliated, and then isolated from 1 to 5 years. This was our law. Well, in 1954, a teenage sister left Detroit and became one of Mr. Muhammad's personal secretaries. And there in the Chicago office, she became pregnant after being there for a year. And she was brought before the Muslim community and humiliated and isolated. And a year later, another secretary, this time one from Lansing, Michigan, came to Chicago. She also became pregnant. She was brought before the community and humiliated and isolated. And because the other person was never brought forth during this court session, it was concluded by all of Mr. Muhammad's followers that it was a non-Muslim who was the other party. Well, we grew so rapidly until that in 1957 or 58, the secretarial staff was expanded to, I think, 8 teenage sisters. In 1959, 6 of them disappeared. 2 of them reappeared in Philadelphia about 2 or 3 months later, and they were all right. The other 4 reappeared in 1960. All 4 of them had babies. All 4 of them had become involved with someone and become pregnant and had these children. So it was, from what I now know, when the 4 of them got back to Chicago and began to compare notes, they found that the same man had told all of them the same story and had made all of them pregnant. That the same man was the father of all 4 of their children and had also been the father of the children brought forth by the 2 secretaries who preceded them.
So this story was kept among these sisters until 1962. Two of them rebelled against the person who was responsible and began to tell the story all over the city of Chicago. It caused many of the Muslims in the Chicago mosque to leave and go back out in the street. They knew it, and I knew nothing about it until 1963 when Mr. Muhammad's son, who had been in prison, came out, and he had been a minister, and he was very religious and spiritual. And when he began to hear these rumors around Chicago, he went to one of the sisters, and the sister admitted to him that the rumor was true. And it was he who first told me about it. And when he told me about it, I wrote to Mr. Muhammad and told him about it, and he admitted that he had a knowledge of it, and that he'd given me a religious explanation that would fit into prophecy and all of that. So I was quiet. And it wasn't until October of 1963 that it came up again. And when it came up again, I realized that the same person who had made these other sisters pregnant was still busy doing the same thing. He hadn't stopped. Two of the sisters had 2 children by the same man. And one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the same man. So when it was known among the Chicago officials that I had a knowledge of this, they became very fearful of me. They became very antagonistic toward me, and they had to do something to diminish the authority that I had, for fear that if this became public knowledge, the followers would leave the Muslim movement and follow me. And it was at that time that they used the statement that I made against President Kennedy as a pretext to cut my authority, and some other things happened that finally produced the split, or forced the split. And when I made the split, the only reason that I didn't make this public knowledge was I knew the implications, and I felt that if the Muslims who were in the Nation of Islam knew it, that which enabled them to be so strongly religious and exercise moral discipline would be shattered, and it would cause all of them to go right back and start doing the things that they had been doing previously.
In fact about it, I am the man that taught Malcolm. As far as what he has done for himself, I didn't teach him that.
In that scenario, was Malcolm worthy to sit in the seat of Elijah Muhammad and lead and be a redeemer of our people? Wait. How many of you ever read the story in the Bible of Noah and his sons? Did you know that Noah had 3 sons? Noah got all of them out of the flood. They landed on Mount Ararat. You remember? According to the Bible. He sent a raven out. The raven didn't come back. He sent a dove out. The dove came back. He came outside of the ark. According to the Bible, he got drunk and was naked laying in the sand. 2 sons refused to look on his nakedness and covered him. And another son called Ham looked down at his nakedness and mocked the man who got him out of the flood. And Noah cursed him. And God upheld the curse, according to the Bible. Now you look at Elijah Muhammad. Did he get Malcolm out of Malcolm's condition? If he saw the leader in that condition, what should he have done? Cover him. Since the leader covered him, why don't you cover the leader and wait till understanding comes? Why would you go to the enemy of both of you? He became vindictive. He was hurt and bitter. Now, let me conclude. I know it's long. Don't tell me. I've been preaching all day. You know how I know Malcolm's shoes? Did you know that before Spike made the movie, that this brother was trying to make the movie Malcolm X? You didn't know that, did you?
Mr. Muhammad, how did you intend to chastise him?
Chastise him?
Yes.
Not me, no. I didn't say I would chastise Malcolm.
Mr. Muhammad,
The chastising comes from Allah.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.